My husband cried for the first time in our marriage. After I wore the red dress he bought me to a $500 dinner with my gay best friend, so I let him walk out without a word. That was 8 months ago. Yesterday, his sister texted to ask if I still wanted to be notified when he gets engaged. So I'm going on a romantic date with my friend to show my husband he's wrong. My husband gets super jealous whenever I spend time with other guys, which I honestly don't get. A lot of my male friends are good dudes, people I've met out at bars who are going through tough times and just need someone to help them out. Sometimes I take them on lunches or walks to be there for them, like a good friend should. I understand that it may sound bad, but these guys are genuine friends of mine and neither I nor them have any foul intentions. One of these guys I met is named Alex. Alex is gay, and we met at a club. We kind of just got talking, and by the end of the night I could tell we would make great friends. I told my husband about it the next day, and he seemed less than thrilled that a guy approached me at a club, but once I said he was gay, my husband seemed okay with it. I have known Alex for about 2 years now, and I can confidently say he is my best friend in the whole entire world. He spoils me, buys me things, pays whenever we get coffee or lunch, and all these other things. This would raise some suspicion in most cases, but he is gay, and I believe that. Well, my husband has been less than happy about it. He has grown to hate Alex the most out of any of my male friends, and I cannot understand why. Alex is gay for Christ's sake. Whenever I mention Alex, my husband gets annoyed. Literally last week, my husband came home from work and asked me about my day. I responded by saying that Alex took me to the amusement park and we went to get food. He got mad at it. He did not yell, but did angrily say that Alex is clearly in love with me. He asked me what man buys a girl lunch once a week, takes her to amusement parks, buys her shoes, kisses her on the cheek in photos, gets her a Gucci bag for her birthday, has her meet his family and so on, without liking her. Well, this set off a huge argument with my husband where I defended Alex, saying he is just a good friend, and he is thankful for how I have helped him, and this is his way to repay me for my help. My husband responded sarcastically, repay you by buying you a $700 Gucci bag. Yeah, sure. The argument escalated and we ended up sleeping in separate rooms for a few nights and not speaking much. A few days later, my husband came to me and apologized, saying he was sorry for losing his cool, but my relationship with Alex makes him uncomfortable, and that Alex is clearly not gay, but pretending to be so he can get closer to me. I told my husband I understood his concerns, and told him I had set up something to prove him wrong. My husband looked confused and asked me what I had done. I told him that yesterday I thought long and hard about what he said, and that I came to the conclusion that I can see why my husband feels the way he does regarding Alex. So to prove to my husband that there is nothing going on between us and that Alex has no intentions, I invited Alex out on a romantic dinner date. I told my husband that I will dress very nicely and see how Alex acts. My husband blew up at me, calling this emotional cheating and that this is unacceptable, that this is me showing Alex that I am indeed interested and enabling his pursuit. I told my husband he is being ridiculous, and that I'm doing this to prove to him that Alex is not into me, which is something that I know, but he clearly does not. He stormed out of the room again. This happened yesterday, and the dinner is today. Alex texted me a few hours ago if we could spend some time together after the dinner too, as he needs to get something off his chest, and would really appreciate me being there. I told him of course I could, so we're going back to his to discuss whatever is on his mind after the dinner. I told my husband this earlier, and this time instead of exploding, I saw him cry. This is the first time I have ever seen my husband cry in front of me, and it is over my gay best friend wanting me to be there for him. I tried to talk to him, but he told me to leave him alone. It's now a few hours until the date, and my husband refuses to speak to me. However I'm going, whether my husband likes it or not, it's for his own sake. I stared at my reflection in the bathroom mirror, applying the final touches of mascara. The red dress I'd chosen hugged my curves perfectly, and I'd spent extra time on my hair, letting it fall in soft waves past my shoulders. My hands moved automatically, adjusting the necklace Alex had given me for Christmas last year. The diamond pendant caught the light, sparkling against my skin. The bedroom door remained closed. Davis hadn't come out since our conversation earlier. I grabbed my purse from the dresser, checking to make sure I had everything. My phone buzzed with a text from Alex confirming our reservation at Le Bernardin, the fancy French restaurant downtown. He'd made the reservation weeks ago apparently, which struck me as odd for a casual dinner between friends. I knocked on the bedroom door before leaving. No response. I pressed my ear against the wood and heard nothing. Maybe he'd fallen asleep. I left a note on the kitchen counter explaining I'd be back late and not to wait up. The Uber ride to the restaurant gave me time to think about Davis's reaction. His tears had caught me off guard. In 5 years of marriage, I'd never seen him break down like that. Not when his father died, not when he lost his job last year, but this somehow had pushed him over the edge. I shook my head, frustrated by his inability to trust me. Le Bernardin was exactly the kind of place Alex loved, dimly lit with candles on every table, soft jazz playing in the background. The hostess led me to a corner booth where Alex was already waiting. He stood when he saw me, his eyes widening as they traveled from my face down to my heels. Sarah, you look absolutely stunning, he said, pulling me into a hug that lasted a hit too long. His cologne enveloped me, the same expensive scent he always wore. He pulled out my chair before sitting across from me. The waiter appeared immediately with champagne. Dom Perignon, I noticed from the label. Alex must have ordered it ahead of time. He raised his glass, his green eyes locked on mine. To us, he said, clinking his glass against mine. I took a sip, the bubbles tickling my nose. Alex had already ordered for both of us. He knew my preferences after 2 years of weekly lunches. The appetizers arrived quickly. Oysters for him, escargot for me. He watched me eat with an intensity that made me shift in my seat. You seem nervous, he observed, reaching across the table to touch my hand. His fingers were warm against mine. Just thinking about Davis, I admitted, pulling my hand back to reach for my water glass. We had another fight about you. Alex's jaw tightened slightly. He still doesn't trust me? He thinks you're pretending to be gay to get close to me. I laughed at the absurdity of it. Can you believe that? Alex didn't laugh. He took a long sip of champagne, his eyes never leaving my face. And what do you think? I think my husband is being ridiculous and jealous. You're my best friend, Alex. Nothing more, nothing less. The main courses arrived. Lobster thermidor for me, duck confit for him. Alex had ordered a bottle of wine to pair with the meal, something French and expensive that he pronounced perfectly when the sommelier presented it. Throughout dinner, he kept finding reasons to touch me, brushing my hand when reaching for the salt, his knee pressing against mine under the table. Remember when we first met? Alex asked suddenly, swirling the wine in his glass. That night at the club? Of course. You saved me from that creepy guy who wouldn't leave me alone. I watched you for an hour before that, he admitted. You were dancing with your friends, laughing. You had on this silver dress that caught the light every time you moved. I knew I had to talk to you. Something in his tone made me pause mid-bite. The way he was looking at me now, with such intensity, such focus. I pushed the thought away. Alex was gay. He told me about his ex-boyfriend, about the clubs he went to in the village. This was just how close friends talked. That's sweet, I said, trying to keep my voice light. I'm glad you did. I don't know what I'd do without you. You You'd never have to find out, he said quietly. The waiter cleared our plates and presented the dessert menu. Alex ordered chocolate souffle for 2 without asking if I wanted to share. When it arrived, he insisted on feeding me the first bite, his eyes darkening when I licked a bit of chocolate from my lips. We should probably get the check, I said, suddenly aware of how intimate this all felt. The candlelight, the champagne, the way Alex hadn't stopped staring at me all night. What's the rush? He signaled for more wine. Davis isn't expecting you back anytime soon, is he? No, but you said you had something you wanted to talk about. Something important? Alex's expression shifted, becoming almost vulnerable. I do, but not here. Let's go back to my place, like we planned. I have something to show you. He paid the check without letting me see the total, though I caught a glimpse. Nearly $500 for one meal. The valet brought his car around, the same black Mercedes he'd bought last year. He opened my door, his hand on the small of my back as I slid into the leather seat. The drive to his apartment was quiet, except for the soft classical music playing through the speakers. Alex kept glancing at me, his hands gripping the steering wheel tighter than necessary. When we stopped at a red light, he turned to face me fully. Sarah, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest with me. Of course. Why did you really ask me to dinner tonight, and why did you dress like that? I felt heat rise to my cheeks. I told you, to prove to Davis that there's nothing between us, that you don't see me that way. And if I did, see you that way? The light turned green before I could answer. Alex accelerated, taking the turn to his building's parking garage sharper than necessary. My heart was pounding now, Davis's words echoing in my head. But no, this was Alex. Gay Alex who'd held me while I cried about work stress, who remembered how I took my coffee, who sent me funny memes throughout the day. His apartment was on the 15th floor, overlooking Central Park. I'd been here dozens of times, but tonight felt different. Alex poured 2 glasses of wine from a bottle that was already open on the counter. His hands shook slightly as he handed me mine. Sit, he said, gesturing to the couch. Please. I sank into the soft leather, hyper aware of how short my dress was when I crossed my legs. Alex sat beside me closer than usual, our knees touching. He set his wine down without drinking it and took both my hands in his. Sarah, I've been wanting to tell you something for a very long time, but I was scared. Scared of losing you. Scared of ruining what we have. My mouth went dry. This wasn't happening. This couldn't be happening. Alex, please let me finish. His grip on my hands tightened. When I met you that night at the club, I was immediately drawn to you. Not just because you're beautiful, though God you are, but because of your laugh, your kindness, the way you light up when you talk about things you're passionate about. I tried to pull my hands away, but he held firm. My heart was racing now, panic setting in. You're gay, I said weakly. You told me about James, about the breakup. Alex's laugh was bitter. There was no James. There was never any boyfriend. I made it all up. The room spun. I yanked my hands free and stood, nearly knocking over my wine glass. What? He stood too, reaching for me. I knew you were married. I saw the ring, but I also saw how he didn't appreciate you, how he took you for granted. So I told you I was gay, knowing it was the only way you'd let me get close to you. You lied to me? For 2 years? I didn't mean for it to go on this long. I thought maybe your marriage would end naturally, or that you'd develop feelings for me despite thinking I was gay. Every gift, every lunch, every moment we spent together, I was trying to show you how much better I could treat you. I backed away, my heel catching on the rug. Alex steadied me, his hands on my waist. We were close now, too close. I could smell his cologne, see the desperation in his eyes. Tonight, when you asked me to dinner, when you showed up looking like this, his voice was rough. I thought finally you were ready to admit what's been between us all along. There's nothing between us. I pushed him away, my voice rising. You're my friend, my gay best friend. This whole time, the full weight of Davis's words crashed over me. Every warning, every argument, every time he'd tried to tell me something was off about Alex. The expensive gifts, the constant attention, the way Alex always found excuses to touch me, to be near me. How had I been so blind? I'm in love with you, Sarah. I've been in love with you since that first night, and I think, deep down, you love me too. Why else would you come here tonight? Why else would you dress like that? Agree to dinner at the most romantic restaurant in the city? To prove my husband wrong. I was crying now, mascara running down my cheeks. To show him that you weren't interested in me. Oh God, Davis. I thought of him at home, crying for the first time in our marriage. He'd known. Somehow he'd seen what I'd been too stubborn, too naive to see. And instead of listening to him, instead of respecting his feelings, I'd done this. I'd gone on what was essentially a date with another man just to prove a point. Alex moved toward me again, but I grabbed my purse and headed for the door. He caught my arm before I could leave. Sarah, please, don't go. We can figure this out. I know you feel something for me too. All those lunches, all those times you called me when you were upset instead of talking to your husband. I wrenched my arm free. I have to go. I have to get home to Davis. He doesn't deserve you. And you do? You lied to me for 2 years. You manipulated me, made me believe we were friends when all along you were just waiting for your chance. That's not love, Alex. I don't even know what that is. I fumbled with the door handle, my hands shaking. Alex didn't try to stop me again. As I waited for the elevator, I heard him call out one last time. I'll be here when you realize the truth, Sarah. When you realize what we could have together. The elevator doors closed on his words. I called an Uber, praying Davis would still be there when I got home. Praying he'd forgive me for being so blind, so stupidly stubborn. The driver kept glancing at me in the rearview mirror, probably wondering why I was crying. The house was dark when I arrived. Davis's car was still in the driveway, which gave me hope. I fumbled with my keys, my hands still shaking. The living room was empty, but I saw light coming from under the bedroom door. I pushed open the bedroom door slowly, my heart hammering against my ribs. Davis sat on the edge of our bed, still in his work clothes, holding something in his hands. As I stepped closer, I realized it was our wedding photo, the one where we're both laughing at something his best man had whispered right before the photographer clicked the shutter. He looked up when he heard me enter. His eyes were red-rimmed but dry now, and there was something different about his expression. Not anger, not even sadness exactly. It was more like resignation, like he'd already made peace with something I was only beginning to understand. You're home early, he said quietly, setting the photo on the nightstand. I thought you'd be at Alex's longer. I stood frozen in the doorway, still in my red dress and heels, makeup streaked down my face. The words tumbled out before I could stop them. Alex's confession, the lies about being gay, how Davis had been right all along. I told him everything, watching his face carefully for any reaction, but he just sat there, listening, his hands folded in his lap. When I finished, the silence stretched between us like a chasm. I waited for him to yell, to say, I told you so, to do something. Instead, he stood up and walked to the closet. That's when I noticed the suitcase on the floor, already half packed with his clothes. Davis, what are you doing? My voice cracked. I started packing while you were gone. He pulled shirts off hangers methodically, folding each one with careful precision. I'm going to stay with my brother for a while. No, please, we need to talk about this. I know I messed up, but now I understand. I'll cut Alex out completely. I'll delete his number, block him on everything. It's not just about Alex, Sarah. He turned to face me, and the calmness in his voice was somehow worse than if he'd been shouting. Do you know how many times we've had this conversation? Not about Alex specifically, but about your friends. Remember Benjamin from the coffee shop? The one who was going through a divorce and needed someone to talk to? I winced. Benjamin had texted me constantly for months, always needing advice or comfort. Davis had asked me to set boundaries, but I'd insisted I was just being a good friend. Or Nicholas from your gym? The one who was struggling with depression and needed hiking buddies? You went on weekend trips with him, Sarah. Overnight camping trips. And when I expressed discomfort, you called me controlling. Each name hit like a physical blow. I remembered them all. The men I'd befriended, helped, spent time with, always with pure intentions on my part, always dismissing Davis's concerns as jealousy. I've spent 5 years watching you give pieces of yourself to other men. Your time, your emotional energy, your attention. And every time I tried to talk to you about it, you made me feel like I was the problem. Like I was some jealous, insecure husband who couldn't handle his wife having male friends. He went back to packing, movements still calm and deliberate. I sank onto the bed, the weight of my choices crushing down on me. But I never cheated, I whispered. I never did anything physical with any of them. Davis paused, a pair of socks in his hand. Do you remember last month when I got that promotion? The one I'd been working toward for 2 years? I nodded, confused by the change in topic. I came home to tell you, and you were on the phone with Alex. I waited in the kitchen for 45 minutes while you talked him through some crisis at work. When you finally hung up, you gave me a quick congratulations and then spent the rest of dinner texting him because he was still upset. The memory hit me like cold water. I'd been so focused on helping Alex that I'd barely acknowledged Davis's achievement. He'd opened a bottle of champagne that sat untouched while I typed out long supportive messages to another man. Or our anniversary 3 months ago, he continued. You left the restaurant early because Benji, another one of your projects, was having a panic attack and needed you. You drove across town at 9 p.m. on our anniversary to sit with him in his apartment. He was suicidal, Davis. He wasn't suicidal, Sarah. His ex-girlfriend had started dating someone new. He was sad and wanted attention from a beautiful woman who would drop everything for him, and you gave it to him, like you always do. I wanted to argue, to defend myself, but the words wouldn't come. Because underneath my justifications, I was starting to see the pattern he'd been trying to show me for years. Davis zipped up the suitcase and set it by the door. Then he sat back down on the bed, not close to me, but not at the far edge either. I need you to understand something, he said. I'm not leaving because you went to dinner with Alex tonight. I'm leaving because you went to dinner with Alex tonight specifically to hurt me. You knew how I felt. You saw me cry, something I've never done in front of you before, and you still chose to go. Not because you believed it would help our marriage, but because you needed to be right. The truth of his words cut deeper than any accusation of cheating would have. I had seen his pain, his vulnerability, and I'd dismissed it. Worse, I'd used it as motivation to prove my point. I've been competing with these men for your attention our entire marriage, he continued. And I'm tired, Sarah. I'm tired of being made to feel crazy for wanting my wife to prioritize our relationship. I'm tired of watching you light up when they text but barely look up from your phone when I'm talking. I'm tired of being the bad guy for having boundaries. I reached for his hand, but he pulled it away gently. Please, Davis, give me another chance. I see it now. I really do. I'll change. The thing is, I believe you. I believe that right now, in this moment, you genuinely want to change. But in a week, maybe 2, someone new will need your help. Some guy at a bar will be going through a hard time, and you'll feel that familiar pull to be needed, to be the one who saves him. And we'll be right back here. He stood up, picking up his suitcase. I followed him to the living room, desperate to find the words that would make him stay. But what could I say? That I'd just realized I'd been emotionally cheating on him for years? That I'd prioritized the attention and validation I got from these men over my husband's feelings? That I'd been so addicted to being needed that I'd neglected the one person who needed me most? I love you, Sarah, Davis said at the front door. I've loved you since the day we met, but I can't keep fighting for a marriage that I'm the only one protecting. You've given so much of yourself away that there's nothing left for us. Where does this leave us? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. I don't know. I need time to think, to figure out if I can move past this. And you need time to figure out why you do this, why you need this attention from other men so badly that you're willing to risk everything for it. He opened the door, then paused. For what it's worth, I'm sorry it took me crying for you to believe something was wrong. I should have been stronger about my boundaries from the beginning instead of letting it get this far. This isn't your fault. It's both our faults, Sarah. I enabled this behavior by staying and accepting it for so long. And you, well, you know what you did. After he left, I stood in the doorway until his taillights disappeared around the corner. Then I went back inside and did something I should have done years ago. I went through my phone and deleted every male friend I'd collected. Alex, Benjamin, Nicholas, Klaus, Jamie, and a dozen others whose names I'd saved with innocent labels like coffee shop guy or gym buddy. Each deletion felt like cutting away a piece of the identity I'd built. Sarah, the helpful one. Sarah, the savior. Sarah, who men trusted with their problems. But underneath that identity was an uglier truth. Sarah, who needed male attention to feel valuable. Sarah, who got a high from being desired, even if she never acted on it physically. Sarah, who was willing to hurt her husband repeatedly just to maintain her fantasy that she was being a good person. I called in sick to work the next day, and the day after that. I spent hours replaying conversations with Davis, seeing them through new eyes, the time he'd asked me not to have lunch with Benjamin anymore, and I'd accused him of being controlling, the way his shoulders would tense when my phone buzzed with another text from Alex, how he'd stopped planning romantic dinners because I so often had to leave early or cancel for one of my friends. On the third day, Alex showed up at my door. I saw him through the peephole, flowers in one hand, a Starbucks cup in the other, my usual order of course. He knocked for 10 minutes, called my phone 15 times, and finally left the flowers on the doorstep with a note I threw away without reading. My sister Catherine came by that evening. Davis had called her, worried about me being alone. She let herself in with the spare key and found me on the couch, still in the same pajamas I'd been wearing for days. Oh honey, she said, pulling me into a hug. I broke down completely, sobbing into her shoulder while she rubbed my back. After I'd calmed down enough to talk, I told her everything. Unlike Davis, she didn't hold back her judgment. I've been watching you do this for years, she said bluntly. Do you know how many times Davis has called me, asking if he was being unreasonable? The man was at his wit's end, Sarah. He loves you so much that he convinced himself he was the problem. Why didn't you say anything? I tried. Remember when I asked you about Benjamin? You told me I didn't understand because I was single. You said married people could have opposite sex friends without it being weird. She was right. I dismissed everyone who tried to warn me. Davis, Catherine, even Davis's mother, who gently suggested once that maybe I was being too generous with my time. The worst part, Catherine continued, is that you're not even a bad person. You genuinely thought you were helping these guys. But somewhere along the way, you got addicted to being needed, to being the cool wife who wasn't jealous or insecure, to proving you were different from other women. That hit home. I had prided myself on being the cool wife who trusted her male friends, who didn't buy into toxic jealousy. But I'd been so focused on that image that I'd ignored the actual toxicity in my behavior. Over the next week, the full scope of what I'd done began to sink in. Alex continued his bombardment. Flowers delivered to my office, which I had the receptionist throw away. Long emails about how Davis was controlling me, which I deleted unread. Even showing up at my gym, I switched locations. Each desperate attempt just reinforced how right Davis had been. This wasn't how a gay best friend behaved. This was how a man in love behaved. But it wasn't just Alex. Benjamin started texting, asking why I'd blocked him on social media. Nicholas called my office when he couldn't reach my cell. Even men I'd half forgotten about began reaching out, having noticed my sudden absence from their lives. The sheer volume of male attention I'd been juggling was staggering when I saw it all at once. I finally understood what Davis had been competing against. Not just one inappropriate friendship, but an entire network of men who'd been circling me like satellites, each one taking a piece of my time and emotional energy that should have belonged to my marriage. 2 weeks after Davis left, I started therapy. Dr. Catherine, I almost laughed at the name coincidence, specialized in relationship issues and didn't pull any punches. You've been having emotional affairs, she said during our first session. Multiple simultaneous emotional affairs. The fact that they weren't physical doesn't make them less damaging to your marriage. But I never saw it that way. I just thought I was being nice. Let me ask you something. How did you feel when these men texted you? When they told you their problems? When they said they needed you? I thought about it. Important. Valued. Like I was making a difference. And how did you feel when your husband needed you? The answer was uncomfortable but honest. Like it was an obligation. Like he should be able to handle things himself. So you gave your best emotional energy to strangers and acquaintances and gave your husband whatever was left over. Can you see how that would be painful for him? I could. God, I could see it so clearly now. We worked through my patterns over the next few sessions. My need to be seen as helpful, rooted in childhood experiences of only getting attention when I was taking care of others. My fear of being seen as jealous or insecure, which made me overcorrect in the opposite direction. My addiction to the excitement of new connections versus the routine of marriage. The irony, Dr. Catherine pointed out, is that in trying so hard not to be a jealous wife, you became something worse, an unfaithful one. Emotional infidelity is still infidelity. 3 weeks after he left, Davis agreed to meet me for coffee. He looked tired but healthier somehow, like a weight had been lifted. We sat at a corner table, the same coffee shop where I'd met Benjamin all those months ago. The parallel wasn't lost on either of us. I've been in therapy, I said without preamble. Individual therapy, to figure out why I do this, why I did this. He nodded, stirring his coffee. That's good. I've been going too, trying to understand why I let it go on for so long. I'm so sorry, Davis. Not just sorry I got caught or sorry you're hurt. I'm sorry for every time I chose them over you, for every time I made you feel crazy for having normal boundaries, for every moment I gave to them that belonged to us. I know you are, and I appreciate that, but sorry doesn't undo 5 years of patterns. We talked for an hour. I told him about cutting off all the men, about Alex's harassment, about the therapy. He told me about staying with his brother, about considering whether he wanted to try again or start fresh. Neither of us had answers, but at least we were talking. As we prepared to leave, he asked, "Do you understand now why I was so upset about Alex specifically? Because you could see what I couldn't, that he was in love with me. Not just that. Sarah, you dressed up for another man. You put on a sexy dress, did your hair and makeup, and went on a romantic date with someone who wasn't your husband. Can you imagine if I'd done that? If I'd told you I was going to dinner with a female friend in a suit and tie to prove she wasn't interested in me? The double standard hit me like a slap. I would have been devastated. I would have seen it as the betrayal it was. The fact that you thought he was gay doesn't make it better," he continued. "It makes it worse. Because it means you were so confident in your rightness that you were willing to hurt me just to prove a point. You saw me cry, Sarah, and you still went. There was nothing I could say to that. He was right. I'd seen his pain and chosen my pride instead." We left the coffee shop separately. Davis said he needed more time to think, to decide if our marriage was salvageable. I told him I'd wait as long as he needed, that I'd keep working on myself regardless of his decision. The next few months were the hardest of my life. I threw myself into therapy, into understanding and changing my patterns. I joined a support group for people with emotional infidelity issues. I read books about boundaries, about marriage, about the addiction to external validation. Alex finally gave up after 2 months of no contact, but not before sending one final email that Davis later told me he'd received a copy of. In it, Alex detailed our entire relationship from his perspective. Every lunch he'd seen as a date, every gift as a token of courtship, every late night conversation as building towards something more. Reading it through his eyes was horrifying. I'd been dating him for 2 years and hadn't even known it. Other men occasionally tried to reconnect. A new guy at work going through a divorce tried to befriend me, clearly looking for the same supportive attention I used to freely give. I politely declined his lunch invitation and kept our interactions strictly professional. It was hard, fighting against my ingrained pattern of wanting to help, but I did it. 4 months after our separation, Davis called. He was ready to talk about possibly reconciling, but with conditions. We'd need couples therapy. I'd need to continue individual therapy. We'd need to establish clear boundaries about opposite-sex friendships that we both agreed to. And we'd need to rebuild from scratch, not just try to patch over the problems. I agreed to everything immediately. Not because I was desperate, though I was, but because I recognized these as the boundaries that should have existed all along. The guardrails that protected a marriage from exactly what had happened to ours. Our first couples therapy session with Dr. McCatherine was brutal. Davis laid out 5 years of hurt in excruciating detail. Times I'd forgotten, patterns I hadn't seen, moments when he'd felt like a third wheel in his own marriage. I had to sit with it. Couldn't defend or justify or explain. Just listen and acknowledge the damage I'd done. But he also took responsibility for his part. For not establishing firmer boundaries earlier. For enabling my behavior by staying. For letting resentment build instead of addressing issues head on. We were both flawed people who'd created a flawed dynamic. Slowly, painfully, we began to rebuild. Date nights where phones stayed in the car. Long conversations about everything and nothing. Relearning each other without the constant interference of my collection of male friends. It was like dating again, except with the weight of shared history and hurt. The work was hard. There were setbacks. Moments when Davis's trust would falter. When he'd see me talking to any man and tense up. Times when I'd feel the old pull to help someone and have to consciously choose my marriage instead. We'd process these moments in therapy, using them as opportunities to practice new patterns. 6 months into reconciliation, we were at a restaurant when I saw Benjamin across the room. He was with a woman who looked like she was hanging on his every word, the same way I used to. He caught my eye and started to come over, but I shook my head slightly. He looked hurt, but returned to his table. Davis had seen the whole exchange. "Thank you," he said quietly, reaching for my hand across the table. "For what?" "For choosing us. It was such a small thing, not engaging with an old friend, but I understood what he meant. Every choice to maintain boundaries was a choice for our marriage. Every moment I didn't give away to someone else was a moment I invested invested in us. I stared at our joined hands across the table, the wedding ring on Davis's finger catching the restaurant's soft lighting. The metal looked duller than I remembered, or maybe that was just my guilt talking. Around us, other couples chatted and laughed over their meals, oblivious to the fragile reconciliation happening at our corner table. The waiter approached with dessert menus, but Davis waved him off. We'd been coming to this place for our monthly check-ins, always sitting at the same table, always ordering the same meals. Dr. McCatherine had suggested establishing new rituals to replace old patterns, and this had become ours. I ran into Alex yesterday, Davis said suddenly, his grip on my hand tightening slightly. My stomach dropped. We'd been doing so well. 8 months into our reconciliation now. I'd maintained every boundary, attended every therapy session, rebuilt trust brick by careful brick. But Alex's name still had the power to make everything feel precarious. Where? I managed to ask, keeping my voice steady. The grocery store. He was in the wine aisle. Davis studied my face carefully. He asked about you. I pulled my hand back to take a sip of water, buying myself a moment. The old me would have asked what Alex said, how he looked, if he seemed okay. The old me would have felt that familiar tug of wanting to help, to fix, to be needed. But I wasn't her anymore, or at least, I was trying not to be. I hope you didn't engage, I said finally. Davis's expression softened. I told him you were doing well and walked away. He tried to follow me to the parking lot, but I just got in my car and left. Good. That's good. We finished dinner in relative quiet, both lost in our own thoughts. As we walked to the car, Davis's phone buzzed. He glanced at it and frowned. Everything okay? I asked. It's my brother. He wants to know if we're still coming to Emma's birthday party next weekend. Emma was Davis's 5-year-old niece, a whirlwind of energy who'd been one of the few bright spots during our separation. She'd been too young to understand why Uncle Davis was staying at their house for months, just excited to have him around for bedtime stories. Of course we're going, I said. I already bought her present, that art set she wanted. Davis smiled, the first genuine smile I'd seen all evening. She'll love that. She's been drawing on everything. Mom's walls didn't stand a chance. We drove home in comfortable silence, a vast improvement from the tense car rides of our early reconciliation. Back then, every quiet moment had felt loaded with unspoken accusations and barely contained hurt. Now, sometimes silence was just silence. At home, I changed into pajamas while Davis checked his work emails. I found him in his office, frowning at his laptop screen. Bad news? I asked from the doorway. The Peterson project is falling apart. Clients threatening to pull out if we don't meet their new timeline. He rubbed his temples. I might have to fly to Chicago next week. When? Wednesday through Friday. Maybe Saturday if things go badly. The old pattern would have been for me to barely acknowledge this, maybe offer a distracted "that sucks," while already thinking about which friend needed my attention. Now, I walked into the office and stood behind his chair, placing my hands on his shoulders. What can I do to help? I asked, meaning it. He tilted his head back to look at me, surprise flickering across his features. Even after months of change, he still seemed caught off guard when I prioritized him. Just this, he said, reaching up to cover one of my hands with his. This helps. The next morning, I woke to find Davis already gone. A note on his pillow explained he'd gone in early to start damage control on the Peterson project. I made coffee and settled into my own work-from-home routine, grateful for the flexibility my job offered. Around lunch, my phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. Sarah, this is James Morrison. From college? I blinked, trying to place the name. James, tall guy from my economics class who'd always borrowed my notes. Hi, James. It's been, what, 7 years? About that, yeah. Listen, I know this is out of the blue, but I'm going through a rough divorce and someone mentioned you'd been really helpful when they were dealing with hard times. I was wondering if we could grab coffee sometime. I could really use a friend right now. The request was so familiar it made my chest tight. This was exactly how it always started. A man in crisis, needing support, reaching out to helpful Sarah who never said no. I could feel the old pull, the ingrained need to be the savior, the one who made everything better. I'm sorry you're going through that, James, I said carefully, but I'm not really available for coffee. If you need support, I'd recommend finding a therapist or joining a divorce support group. They have great resources these days. The silence on the other end stretched long enough that I wondered if he'd hung up. Oh, okay, I just thought, never mind. Thanks anyway. He hung up before I could say anything else. I set my phone down and took a deep breath. Dr. Catherine would be proud. Davis would be proud. More importantly, I was proud of myself. The week flew by in a blur of work deadlines and preparation for Davis's Chicago trip. I helped him pack, made sure his presentations were loaded correctly, even drove him to the airport Wednesday morning. Call me when you land, I said, kissing him goodbye at the departure gate. Always do, he replied, pulling me in for a longer hug. Love you. Love you too. The house felt empty without him, but not in the desperate way it had during our separation. This was just missing my husband, not drowning in the consequences of my choices. Thursday afternoon, I was deep in a spreadsheet when my doorbell rang. Through the peephole, I saw a young man, maybe mid-20s, holding a clipboard. Yes? I called through the door. Delivery for Sarah Mitchell? I hadn't ordered anything. Who's it from? Says here. Alex Brown? My blood ran cold. I'm not accepting any deliveries from that person. Please return it. Ma'am, I'm just the delivery guy. You'll have to sort it out with the sender. Then leave it on the porch. I'll deal with it later. I watched through the window as he set down a large box and left. For an hour, I just stared at it from inside, wrestling with curiosity and boundaries. Finally, I called Davis. Hey, he answered on the second ring. Everything okay? You sound stressed. Alex sent something. It's on the porch. I haven't opened it. I heard him sigh. What do you want to do? I don't know. Part of me wants to just throw it away unopened. Part of me thinks I should know what it is. What would Dr. Catherine say? I almost laughed. We'd started using that as shorthand for making healthy decisions. She'd probably say opening it gives him power, that the healthiest thing is to dispose of it without engaging. Sounds right to me, but it's your choice, Sarah. I trust you. Those 3 words hit harder than any declaration of love could have. After everything, Davis trusted me. I wouldn't betray that again. I'm throwing it away, I decided. Unopened. Good choice. Hey, I have to run to another meeting, but I'll call you tonight. Please. Good luck with Peterson. I hung up and marched outside, picked up the box without looking at it too closely, and carried it straight to the garbage bin. Whatever Alex thought he could accomplish with gifts, I wasn't interested. That chapter was closed. Friday evening, Davis called with good news. The client had agreed to a modified timeline. He'd be home Saturday afternoon instead of extending the trip. I spent Saturday morning cleaning, grocery shopping, and preparing his favorite meal. When I heard his key in the lock, I felt that flutter of anticipation that had been missing for so long in our marriage. He looked exhausted, but smiled when he saw me. Something smells amazing, he said, dropping his suitcase by the door. Lasagna, from scratch, not the frozen kind. He crossed the room and pulled me into a kiss that made my knees weak. Missed you, he murmured against my lips. Missed you too. We ate dinner while he filled me in on the Chicago drama, client tantrums, last-minute changes, a colleague who dropped the ball spectacularly. I listened, asked questions, offered sympathy in all the right places. It felt natural natural now, being present for him. Oh, I almost forgot, he said as we cleared the dishes. Mom called while I was at the airport. She wanted to confirm we're both coming to Easter dinner. I tensed slightly. Family gatherings were still fraught. Davis's family had been polite but distant since our reconciliation, clearly protective of him after what I'd put him through. Do you want me there? I asked carefully. Of course I do. You're my wife. He paused, studying my face. But if you're not comfortable, no, I'll go. I need to face them eventually. And I miss your mom's ham. He laughed. She'll be thrilled to hear that. She's been perfecting the glaze for weeks. Sunday was Emma's birthday party, held at one of those chaotic indoor play places that smelled like pizza and feet. Davis's brother David greeted us stiffly, but his wife Melissa gave me a genuine hug. Sarah, so good to see you. Emma's been asking if Aunt Sarah was coming all morning. Before I could respond, a tiny tornado in a princess dress slammed into my legs. Aunt Sarah, Uncle Davis said you got me a present. Can I open it now? Please, please, please. After cake, monster, David said, scooping her up. Go play with your friends. She wiggled free and ran off, leaving an awkward silence in her wake. David's jaw was tight as he watched me. Davis said, a warning in his tone. It's fine, I said quickly. I'll go help Melissa with the food. I spent most of the party in the kitchen area, arranging pizza slices and juice boxes. Other parents chatted around me, but I focused on being helpful without inserting myself into conversations. Old habits channeled into appropriate contexts. During cake time, Emma insisted I sit next to her. She chattered nonstop about kindergarten, her new bike, the boy who pulled her pigtails. I listened with genuine interest, marveling at how simple relationships could be at 5. Aunt Sarah? She said suddenly, frosting on her nose. Why did Uncle Davis live with us for so long? The table went quiet. I felt everyone's eyes on me, waiting to see how I'd handle this. Sometimes grown-ups need space to figure things out, I said carefully. But Uncle Davis and I worked really hard to fix things, and now we're better. Oh, like when I broke Mommy's vase and had to sit in timeout? Something like that, yeah. She seemed satisfied with that answer and went back to demolishing her cake. David's expression had softened slightly, and Melissa gave me an encouraging smile. The drive home was quiet, but not uncomfortably so. Davis reached over and took my hand at a red light. You handled that well. With Emma, kids are easier than adults. They don't hold grudges the same way. David will come around. He just needs time. I know. I'm not in any rush. I hurt you, which means I hurt your family. Trust takes time to rebuild. He squeezed my hand. Have I told you lately how proud I am of you? Of us? Not since Thursday, I teased. Well, I am. We've come a long way. Monday brought a new challenge. I arrived at work to find Benjamin in the lobby of my building looking haggard. I stopped short, my heart racing. Sarah, please, just 5 minutes. I need to talk to you. Benjamin, you need to leave. Now. I know you blocked me everywhere, but I'm desperate. My ex is trying to take the kids. She's saying I'm an unfit father and I don't know what to do. The old Sarah would have been sucked in immediately. Kids in danger? A father about to lose everything? But I recognize the manipulation now. The way he led with the most sympathetic angle. I'm sorry you're dealing with that, but I can't help you. Please don't come here again. I walked past him to the elevators, my hands shaking. He called after me, but I didn't turn around. Security would handle it if he didn't leave. My coworker Janet raised an eyebrow as I practically ran into the elevator. Ex-boyfriend? She asked. Ex-friend. Long story. Men are exhausting, she commiserated. If only she knew. I texted Davis about the encounter immediately. His response was swift. Are you okay? Do I need to come get you? I'm fine. Just shaken. He caught me off guard. I'm proud of you for walking away. That couldn't have been easy. It hadn't been. Even now, part of me wondered if Benjamin really was about to lose his kids, but that wasn't my problem anymore. I had my own life, my own marriage to protect. The week progressed without further incident. Davis and I fell into our rhythms. Morning coffee together, texts throughout the day, dinner and conversation in the evenings. It wasn't perfect. We still had moments of tension, times when old patterns tried to resurface, but we caught them now, named them, worked through them. Thursday night, we were cooking together when his phone rang. He glanced at it and frowned. It's Alex. My hand stilled on the vegetables I was chopping. How did he get your number? He's had it. From before, when he'd sometimes text to check if you were okay when you weren't answering your phone. Another boundary violation I'd been blind to. What friend texts your spouse to track you down? Don't answer it, I said. Wasn't planning to. He declined the call and blocked the number in one smooth motion. There, done. But Alex wasn't done. Over the next few days, he tried everything. Calls from different numbers, emails to Davis's work address, even a letter sent to his office. Each attempt was met with silence and blocking. We documented everything, just in case we needed a restraining order eventually. Saturday morning, I was gardening in the front yard when a familiar car pulled up. My heart sank as Alex got out, looking terrible. He'd lost weight, his usually perfect hair unkempt. Sarah, please. I know you don't want to see me, but I need closure. I stood up, keeping the garden bed between us. Alex, you need to leave. Now, just tell me why. Why did you ghost me? We were best friends. You were the most important person in my life because you lied to me for 2 years, because you pretended to be gay to manipulate me, because you tried to destroy my marriage. I never meant for it to go that far. I loved you so much. I still do. That's not love, Alex. Love doesn't lie. Love doesn't manipulate. Love respects boundaries. Davis appeared in the doorway, phone in hand. I'm calling the police if you don't leave in the next 30 seconds. Alex's face crumpled. This is what you want? This controlling, jealous man who isolates you from your friends? He's not isolating me from friends. He's protecting our marriage from someone who pretended to be a friend while actively trying to sabotage us. 20 seconds, Alex. Alex looked between us, seeming to finally understand he'd lost. Without another word, he got in his car and drove away. Davis came outside and wrapped his arms around me as I shook. You okay? Yeah, I think so. That was intense, but you handled it perfectly. We went inside and I made tea while Davis called the police non-emergency line to report the incident, creating a paper trail in case Alex escalated. The officer we spoke to recommended we consider a restraining order if he showed up again. That night, we lay in bed talking about everything and nothing. Davis played with my hair while I traced patterns on his chest. Both of us just grateful to be there, together, after everything. I love you, I said into the darkness. I love you too. Always have. Even when you hated me a little. He was quiet for a moment. I never hated you, Sarah. I hated what was happening to us, hated feeling invisible in my own marriage, but I never hated you. I hated myself for a while, after I understood what I'd done, but you changed. That's what matters. Sunday was Easter, and we drove to Davis's parents' house with a coconut cake I'd made from his grandmother's recipe. His mother, Linda, greeted us at the door with careful warmth. Sarah, the cake looks beautiful. Thank you for making it. Thank you for having me. The afternoon was filled with family, cousins I hadn't seen since before the separation, aunts who eyed me warily, uncles who made pointed jokes about marriage being hard work. I weathered it all, staying close to Davis but not clinging, helping in the kitchen without overstepping. During dinner, Linda surprised me by raising her glass. I want to make a toast, she said, to second chances and to the people brave enough to take them. She looked directly at me as she said it, and and I felt tears prick my eyes. Davis squeezed my hand under the table. After dinner, I found myself alone with Linda in the kitchen, loading the dishwasher. I owe you an apology, I said quietly. She paused, a plate in her hand. For what? For hurting your son. For making you watch him suffer. For being too stubborn to see what was right in front of me. Linda set the plate down and turned to face me fully. We all make mistakes, Sarah. What matters is what we do after we realize we've made them. I'm trying, every day. I know, I can see it. Davis is happy again. Really happy. That's all I've ever wanted for him. She pulled me into a hug, and I let myself cry a little into her shoulder. When we pulled apart, she handed me a tissue with a knowing smile. Now, help me with this pie. David will eat the whole thing if we don't portion it out. The drive home was peaceful, both of us full of good food and family warmth. As we pulled into our driveway, I noticed something on the porch. Stay in the car, Davis said, but I was already getting out. It was a single rose with a note. I didn't need to read it to know who it was from. I'll get a restraining order filed tomorrow, I said, picking up the rose and dropping it directly into the garbage can. This has to stop. We'll go together, first thing in the morning. Inside, we went through our nighttime routine, Davis checking locks while I started the dishwasher, both of us moving around each other with practiced ease. In bed, he pulled me close, my back to his chest, his arm secure around my waist. Thank you, I whispered. For what? For giving us another chance. For believing I could change. For protecting us when I didn't know we needed protecting. He pressed a kiss to my shoulder. Thank you for proving me right. I smiled in the darkness. Tomorrow we'd deal with restraining orders and Alex's escalating behavior. We'd continue therapy, keep working on our patterns, keep choosing each other over and over again. But tonight, in our bed, in our home, we were just Davis and Sarah, imperfect people who'd nearly lost everything and fought to rebuild something stronger. The work wasn't finished. It might never be completely finished. Trust, once broken, required constant tending. I thought about the woman I'd been a year ago, so certain she was right, so blind to the damage she was causing. I couldn't hate her. She was part of my journey, but I was grateful not to be her anymore. Davis's breathing evened out behind me, the steady rhythm of sleep. I matched my breathing to his, letting the peace of the moment wash over me. Outside, a car drove by, its headlights briefly illuminating our bedroom wall before moving on. The house settled around us with familiar creaks and sighs. In the morning, we'd face whatever came next together, but for now, this was enough. We were enough. The marriage we'd rebuilt from ashes was different from what we'd had before. Scarred but stronger, tested but true. I closed my eyes and let sleep take me. Davis's arm still wrapped protectively around me, his wedding ring cool against my skin. Some stories don't get fairy tale endings. Sometimes the best you can hope for is a second chance and the wisdom to not waste it. We hadn't wasted ours.